Hello everybody, I'm Sarah and I'm a recorder player. Synesthesia is basically when your wires get crossed and your senses get mixed up. You may see, sound or smell words. Like approximately 2 to 4% of the population, I have synesthesia, and I didn't think it affected my day-to-day life much until I realised how essential it is for my process of learning and memorising music. I use colour grapheme synesthesia, time-space synesthesia and chromesthesia to shoehorn hours and hours of sheet music into my brain. And here's how I do it. The process in brief, starting with sheet music, I take small sections and use my short-term visual memory to read off the score in my head, repeating each section lots of times. As I do this, I'm building up the audio memory of how it sounds and gradually the muscle memory of what my fingers are doing. Then I take this audio and muscle memory and use that to construct a new score in my brain, but coloured in and spaced out with synesthesia. And finally, when I practice or perform, I'm now reading from this newly constructed synesthesia score in my head, supported with my audio and muscle memory. Bam! It makes perfect sense to me. But what is synesthesia? Let's ask Wikipedia, because science. Synesthesia is a perceptual phenomenon where stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. Basically, your senses get mixed up. It's involuntary and it's automatic. You can't decide for it to happen, it just does. We don't know exactly why this happens yet. Some theorise that synesthetes have extra pathways and connections in their brain, causing interference between regions of the brain responsible for different things. Others posit that everybody has these connections. In synesthetes, they're just a bit stronger or active. Another theory is disinhibited feedback, where signals from late-stage multisensory processing can actually feedback and influence the earlier stages of this process. How many people have it? Estimates have ranged from 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 4. And certain types are much more prevalent. For example, colour grapheme synesthesia, seeing letters and numbers in colour. Other types like taste synesthesia, physically tasting something when, for example, reading a particular word, are much more rare. I found a chart online depicting all different possible sensory crossovers and their prevalence, though I can't say how scientifically accurate it is. So what kind of synesthesias do I have? I just want to say at this point, growing up, I thought this was all completely normal. I thought everyone had synesthesia. I didn't know there was a name for it. So at this point, I don't know whether you're watching this thinking, yeah, Sarah, everyone has this, it's obvious, or what is she talking about? Fellow synesthetes, please say hi in the comments. First up, I have grapheme colour synesthesia. Letters, numbers, days of the week, months of the year all have specific colours. These are involuntary and automatic. I didn't decide them, they just are. I've made a handy chart for you. If your colours are different, which they probably will be, I know this will be jarring to see, so I apologise. Second, I have time-space synesthesia and space sequence synesthesia. I see time. I see time laid out in front of me with its specific shapes and colours. I can zoom in to a week or a day, or I can zoom out and see centuries and millennia. It is, of course, colour-coded according to my grapheme colour synesthesia. This is just super handy for remembering dates or schedules because I can literally see it. Next up, I have chromesthesia or sound to colour synesthesia. I see sounds and music in shape and colour. I have to say though, I don't know how much of this is real and how much comes from watching Fantasia obsessively as a child. Though now I think about it, maybe I was watching Fantasia so much because it was scratching that particular sensory itch. So these areas of synesthesia have, I guess, a positive impact on my life. Neutral, really. They're just there. However, I do suffer from some other sensory issues that unfortunately have a significant negative impact on my life. I have misophonia, which is an extreme aversion to certain sounds. For me, it starts with eating sounds and mouth sounds, and this triggers rage and flight. I have to get away. I also have a phobia of sudden loud sounds, in particular balloons popping, dogs barking, and fireworks. These sounds, or the expectation of them, triggers cold, hard fear, and I freeze. Two very separate audio triggers with separate effects, both equally shit. Unfortunately, it does affect my day-to-day life. I have convoluted strategies for coping with each. Maybe this is the trade-off for experiencing most of my senses in ecstatic colour. And yes, the irony is not lost on me that these two basically debilitating sensory issues are to do with sound, and yet I'm a professional musician. Ha 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 ha! Moving on, synesthesia, how does it relate to music? First of all, my colour grapheme synesthesia applies to musical notes too. The musical notes are the same colour as their letter counterparts. For example, C is pale grey, D is black, E is yellowish. However, they can be augmented. Adding sharps makes the colours more intense. Adding flats makes them fade out and pale. Major keys will keep the colours very clear, and a minor key will muddy the colours a little bit. This is all sounding very logical, right? Did my brain just invent this at some point? I honestly can't say. Chords and scales are really interesting because they become a combination of their parts, and they can be quite beautiful. A D minor scale, for example, is black because it's D, but it's shot through with these twinkles of white and bright blue, and there's some little bits of red and brown in there as well. It's all moving and it's alive. E flat major is a sunny orangey yellow, but having those flats in there, in particular the B flat and the F, pale it out a little bit, so it's like a cloudy morning. F major is misty and grey, whereas F minor has some red shot through its heart. I don't like chromatic scales because every colour is of equal importance and it becomes this jarring, jumbled mess. When I'm playing a piece of music from the sheets, and thus I know what the notes and the keys are, I will see these colours fading in and out little bit like clouds passing overhead. When listening to the music without the sheets, I get colours and shapes in my head, and these gradually come into focus as I get to know the music better. So in an ensemble, I don't only hear my colleagues playing, but I can imagine their parts as coloured shapes moving around. However, sometimes I will see a passage in a certain colour, and then if I learn the notes later, I'll realise that the letters are a different colour. This will influence it a little bit, but ultimately those two realities coexist. I don't often have this problem as a recorder player because, like many experienced players, I can hear a recorder and know what note it is by its timbre. I don't have perfect pitch in any way, shape or form, thankfully, but I can hear a sound and know that's a B flat on a soprano. So let's break down my memorising process when I'm working from sheet music. First off, let's cast our minds back to the early days of Team Recorder. This video, How to Memorise Music. I'm still so proud of this video. Here I discuss how using many different types of memory is a really effective tool for memorisation. We have visual, reading the score, audio, how it sounds, muscle memory, what your fingers and tongue are doing, and intellectual, that's knowing the notes and the chords and the beats and the rhythm. And it's only later I realised how much all of this is shot through with and supported by my synesthesia. First off, I will take my score and I will look at it and I will play it through to give myself a basic audio print of the music, just like you do, I guess. But immediately my brain is colouring in the score according to the notes and the keys. Notes at the beginning and ends of phrases or sections will also bookend it a little bit, giving general colours. When I play a note, I can see it, I can almost touch it. And the more I play the music, the more focused it will become, the more detailed in terms of colours. So that's the first step. I'm still looking at my score, but it's got like an overlay of colours on top. I would take a very small section, maybe just one bar, and screenshot it with my brain, if you will. I put the music away and I'm repeating it and I'm repeating it, reading it from my short-term visual memory. And each time I play it, I'm trying to concentrate on something different. My muscle memory is learning all of those finger changes, and my audio memory is keeping track of the intervals and the jumps, correcting me when I go wrong, and keeping my short-term visual score as a reference. I will continue this for as long as I need, but under all of this, my brain is constructing its new visual synesthesia score. So I'm gradually letting go of that short-term visual score, and I'm using my muscle memory and how it sounds to make a new synesthesia representation in my brain. Does that make sense? And this reconstruction process is so important. If I try to rely on just one type of memory, trying to remember how the score looks, or trying to remember how it sounds and playing by ear, or trying to follow my fingers, I'm on shaky ground. If I make a mistake, I'm lost. But by reconstructing it from the ground up, that's solid. Eventually, I will have memorized that small section and constructed almost a sculpture in my head of how it looks. The music is there, but it's coloured in, shaped out, made real. And as I go through the piece, I'll continue building the sculpture and knitting it all together. And by the time I've finished this, it's so solid and detailed, it's almost a piece of cake to work from it. Sections I don't know will remain as hazy blank spots, so I'll make sure to go back in, hone in on them, and work them out in some more detail. You've probably guessed it takes time and it takes a few passes to get it right. So what I like to do is go back and hone in again on specific types of memory. For example, checking it against the original score, playing along with a recording to check my ears, or playing without sound to check my muscle memory. So this way of working for me is painstaking, but it's long lasting. I can recall pieces that I learned years and years ago. I can learn hours of complex music in my brain. And I'm not so worried about making mistakes or forgetting bits on stage, because I use all these different types of memory. That's lots of handholds that I can use to get back in. And this visual synesthesia score that I create works on many levels. It's the notes of a piece, but if I zoom out, it can also be the pieces in a program. For example, I'll know, okay, we start with that bright blue yellow pointy piece, and then we go to that brown flowy piece, and then the kind of pale grey smooth piece. It makes it easier in a concert that I don't have to be like, what's next? What's next? Oh, and a good point. Does this get messed up if I transpose the music? Not really, because as a recorder player, we're used to using different fingerings, different sizes of recorder all the time. So what I do is keep my magical mind palace the same, and I'll just move my fingers to a new setting, if that makes sense. Whoa! I didn't realise I did all that in my brain. I love hearing from other people with synesthesia because we always have these moments of recognition with one another and also new things we can learn. So I've got a couple of podcast recommendations for you. The first is the Ghost Notes podcast, run by the makers of the YouTube channels 12 Tone and Polyphonic. In this episode, link in the description, they chat with YouTuber Adam Neely about synesthesia in music and what it means for them. And on the Squarepeg Podcast, host Amy and guest Victoria Evans talk about their synesthesia in the context of autism. Squarepeg is a podcast sharing experiences of neurodivergent women, often diagnosed later in life, and it's brilliant. So what do you think? This video is a little bit of a departure from what I usually talk about, so I'm really curious to hear what you think. Please let me know in the comments. As always, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face down here. Over here's the Team Recorder Patreon, where you can choose to support Team Recorder. And here's my tutorial, step-by-step, on memorising music. You can do it too. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!